Welcome to this public forum, or the Have Your Say, as it's also known. So, this is an opportunity for members of our community to address councillors. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is being audio and video recorded, and the recording will be made available on the internet. No other persons are permitted to record the meeting unless specifically authorised by council to do so. In relation to the Have Your Say, all speakers are requested to ensure their comments are relevant to the particular agenda item. The chairperson may withdraw the privilege to speak where a speaker makes personal remarks or criticisms or uses abusive or inappropriate language. Speakers do not enjoy any special protection arising from comments made during this forum and should therefore refrain from making defamatory remarks or personal defamatory statements against any individual, and just ask if mobile phones could be set to silent, please. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. Now, we have 7 speakers today for the Have Your Say section. Normally, we are allowed 4. In order to accommodate everybody, the speakers will only have 3 minutes, and we really need to be strict with that 3-minute timeline. I suggest, councillors, if you have any questions of the speaker, you really try and make it concise if need be. So let's get underway. We have I should say all of the speakers are in relation to the residential subdivision of Carina Close and Spring Hill Lane. So Mr Ian Lloyd is our first speaker up here, please. Mr Lloyd.
Mr Mayor and councillors, thank you for this opportunity to address you all. This morning and every morning for the past 11 years since living in Sutherland Avenue, my front view and that of 7 of the 9 houses serviced by Sutherland Avenue was picture perfect. I could see 3 sheds and less than 8 houses, and that's it. Most of the very small number of neighbours on the eastern side of the proposed development have the same or similar views, and in setting this scene, I am representing this perspective for them. Others here today have different perspectives, but those who live on the western side of the proposed subdivision have also settled into a tranquil, thoughtfully planned and successful subdivision designed for very desirable quality of living. But from the submissions viewed recently, it can be seen that the very large majority of stakeholders are not averse to change. The evidence here clearly establishes that we do not have enough information and that a reasonable attempt has not been made to engage with and communicate with the landholders, as was requested repeatedly in writing before any determination was made. According to the council, application and workflow accounts, some form of determination we believe was made on the 7th of February this year, and we would consider this to be a breach of the understanding that we have been given by council. In particular, I speak of the following issues that those I represent would like addressed. Firstly, the traffic flow for Sutherland Avenue will be more than doubled. Currently, it services only 9 dwellings, and so using the RMS guide for traffic generation development, as has been done in the report, traffic flow will increase by more than 200%, from 90 to 310 movements. It's a major change with major impact on the residents. We note the reported issues and attempts to redress the narrowness of Carina Close, yet the proposed width of Sutherland Avenue is also 8 metres and considered by us residents to be unsatisfactory to carry the larger proportion of the traffic into the subdivision to 23 lots and a total of 31 dwellings serviced by Sutherland Avenue. Since the reporting period, there has been a significant growth in housing in the Kelly's Plains area and around Platform Road, with a noted increase in traffic flow along Old Goswick Road and the Danglesley Road, and we believe that this requires further investigation, especially for the level railway crossing, which was not widened at the time of upgrade to allow 2 vehicles to safely pass, and with the associated stop signs now being removed, the intersection of Old Goswick Road and Danglesley Road, which has a difficult angle to negotiate and a very impeded view to the approaching traffic from the east. Most importantly, though, we believe that the council has finally, and perhaps greatest cause of concern, For much of the frustration and some of the anger that we are aware of is the apparent lack of meaningful engagement with this community. These submissions provide some substantial evidence highlighting this in terms of notification by council and of response from council in a timely manner, not just for those who are joined the development, but others in the area who will also be negatively impacted. And we believe that to determine a way forward, it is both reasonable and appropriate for council to act as stated in their own community engagement strategy 2021-24 and to engage with us with openness, transparency, trust and respect. We feel that these submissions provide ample evidence that to date this has not happened, and this in itself warrants explanation and further investigation.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd.
Thank you.
Councillors, any questions for Mr. Lloyd? Thank you. I'd now like to call on Ms. Anita Taylor to come and speak.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors and management. I am speaking, I guess, against this proposal, and I'm doing so because I too believe we need further information. I purchased my property a year ago very deliberately in the Avenue, moving from out of town, and I did so because I guess the lifestyle and the tranquil nature of the Avenue. The importance of Armidale as a whole needs to be taken into consideration because we are interested in development and we do need housing. So the development itself is not a problem for me, more so the ability to consult and to understand better the impacts on traffic and also water. Those in the Avenue will know that our water pressure is substandard, but you know that's just a fact of life of living where we are. But if we're going to have an extra drain, pardon the pun, on our water system, then we do need to have a really serious look on the infrastructure to the water supply. And I am particularly concerned about the impact on traffic, whether we need a thoroughfare, how we're going to manage that, as the previous speaker has said, in relation to the surrounding traffic. So I'm urging you to take some caution, perhaps postpone your decision, have further consultation and better understand the impact on the traffic and the water and the residents as a whole, noting, of course, the wider importance for Armidale and our prosperity and having a fulsome population and access to land. I think it's really important that we consider that. So I'm not against development per se, but more that we understand the impact on our community, on our infrastructure, and I guess our way of life, you know, particularly those residents that have bought up there very particularly as the existing avenue is not a thoroughfare. So I thank you for allowing me to speak and urge you to take caution in your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. I'd now like to ask Mr. Graham Glover to come up and address us.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, feels like it would have been a good opportunity to have this say 2 years ago from my perspective. We purchased a nice little lot on Sutherland Avenue. I have a young family that enjoy the street and the nature in the area, and we're positioned on what is now proposed to be the main thoroughfare to this development. I think Ian pointed out that there's going to be a 200% increase of traffic on our road, and it is a shared roadway. So on any given day, there are pedestrians, there are horse riders, little kids cycling, and one of our main concerns is how our livelihood is going to be affected by this development. So we really request, we hope that councillors will consider strongly what sort of safety measures will be put in place. I've recently been given information that an 8-metre road is proposed for Sutherland Avenue, a dual carriageway, that will have implications for the mature gum trees that are opposite our house on number 17. It's with the immense amount of civil works and construction that will accompany such a development, there is going to be a lot of machinery, no doubt, and a lot of traffic for years to come developing this area. And I would like you to consider involving the community in coming up with another option for access to this development that doesn't involve impeding upon our rural aspect in the Sutherland Avenue and Spring Hill Avenue area. We are very new to this development up until 2019. We were largely unaffected, and we are now in a position where the majority of the lots are proposed to be accessed off Spring Hill Avenue. Now, I'm aware that councillors were inspecting the land up from the Carina Close perspective, but I also urge you to head over to Spring Hill Avenue and experience the peacefulness, what is essentially a nature strip, and also to walk down in your gumboots to where the proposed development is. I was down there this morning. It is indeed a marsh. And looking at the floodplain studies, which I see have been brought up, a lot of the lots are proposed to be developed within that floodplain planning level. So it certainly seems obvious that there's a lot more consideration that needs to go in to this development. And the community, as you can tell from the numerous submissions, would very much like to be a part in coming up with a solution. And my final point being probably the most halfway point would be to reduce the number of lots. A 50% reduction in the number of lots on the development would greatly decrease the construction time and the traffic that is going to affect all of us on the avenue and Spring Hill and Sutherland Avenue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. Councillors, any questions? Yep. Councillor McMichael. You'll just need to kill.
Yep. So I just had a couple of questions. Sorry, you said livelihood. Do you have an actual, do you mean a business, or do you just mean where you live?
Well, our lot is located within 4 metres of Sutherland Avenue. Our livelihood is our lifestyle, which involves utilising the shared access road for pedestrian access through Spring Hill Avenue to town. We can, as you're all aware, there is a thoroughfare to town. We walk on foot, and the kids play in that area and enjoy the nature strip on Spring Hill Avenue too.
The other question I had was, you said something. You said a dual carriageway. I just wanted to clarify. I think that's a particular term, and I don't think that's what we meant. And I just wanted to clarify with perhaps one of the staff, maybe.
Yes, Councillor McMichael, I can confirm that a dual carriageway just means a pavement that facilitates vehicles moving in both directions. So it can be dual split or dual, which is a combined carriageway facilitating both directions.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Glover. I'd like to call upon Mr. Matthew Ferris, who is speaking for the item.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor and councillors. My name is Matt Ferris. I'm the Senior Engineer for Kelly Covey Group Consulting Engineers. I'm speaking on behalf of the developers, and also on behalf of my own work. We prepared the traffic modelling analysis as well as a stormwater and site servicing analysis for the development. I had a whole bunch of notes here, but just hearing the comments from the people before me, I think the main issue that's causing concern is with traffic, and I think we need to put in context the difference between the desire for amenity and the function of a public road. I understand and I acknowledge and I sympathise with the residents of the Avenue and Spring Hill Lane that they enjoy an enhanced level of amenity, not a lot of traffic, not a lot of cars, lots of opportunities for kids to play and things like that. But I think what we need to put in context is that the function of those roads is to convey traffic. The land is zoned R2. It was the intention of council when the LEP was formed 10 years ago, I think, for that land to be developed as low density residential. For that land to be developed, there needs to be roads and there needs to be traffic. The development that's proposed will certainly generate traffic, and no doubt it will increase the level of traffic on Springhall Lane and the Avenue, and in some cases by 200%. However, again, to put that in context, that 200% is still significantly less than the capacity of those roads. A mid-block capacity for a urban road is about 600 vehicles an hour. Sounds ridiculous, but that's the capacity in accordance with Austroads and the RTA Guide to Traffic Developments. The development that's proposed has significantly less traffic than that. We talk about level of service and degree of saturation. And the traffic that's proposed for this development is significantly lower than what those roads can handle. So while there's no doubt the traffic will increase and it will affect the people that live there, the roads that are proposed, as well as the roads that are proposed to be used that are existing, will have ample capacity to cater for that additional traffic. And the reduction in amenity, I think, will be minimal once the construction traffic is through, the houses are developed. And in that regard, we propose, and it's been conditioned, that a construction management plan be developed that will control vehicle access to and from the site, both during the construction of the subdivision as well as the construction of the dwellings themselves. So just in summary, the planning controls have been met, the permissibility has been met for the development, the minimum lot size has been met, biodiversity has been met. We've complied with the LEP, the DCP, the engineering code, Austroads guidelines, all the things that we are required to comply with have been complied with. I think that any residual issues or risks that council perceive for the development can be addressed through conditional development of the consent and through detailed design. I don't see any reason for the decision for council to be delayed any further than what it already has. And if there are any issues that still need to be resolved, I think we can do that through the detailed design process once the consent has been issued. We just want to thank council, and in particular John Goodall, who has provided a lot of assistance and advice. He's been very thorough and he's been pretty frank with myself and the developers over the last few years, and making sure that the development meets the standards that council require. And I thank John personally for his assistance there, and for his comprehensive report that's in the business paper today. Thanks very much.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Mr. Ferris. Sorry, before you go, Councillor O'Connor.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Shall I ask? I just wanted to comment, if you wouldn't mind, on the suggestion that some of the blocks are prone to flooding or in a floodplain or whatever.
Sure, they are. There was a slide up earlier. Certainly they are within the, call it the flood planning level. There's a watercourse that traverses some of the lots, as you can see through the lines there. Again, the government and council has comprehensive guidelines on development within floodplain areas. There are designated building envelopes on each of these lots, which means you can only put a house in certain spots, and those spots are outside of the flood planning levels. No problem.
Councillor Robinson, you had a question.
Thank you. Well, I had a couple of questions. The first one was rather an airy-fairy question, that bearing in mind you've got a watercourse running across the subdivision from roughly east-west, but it prevents access from north-south to Ross Street. Have you ever thought of finding a way of maybe crossing that stream so that in a long, long time in the future, when the developments are happening on the blocks at front Ross Street, whether you could actually have access that way and solve the problem of access via Springhill Lane and via Carina Close?
Yeah, thanks for your question. Certainly in the early stages of the development, and again, after the initial submission, when council raised a lot of issues with what was set out, there were a lot of options considered. Using Ross Street as a thoroughfare was certainly one of them. There are issues with crossing that stream. There's also issues further down with crossing the Great Northern Railway. If we continue to have access further down, we end up having to cross the railway line, which is almost impossible at the moment with the regulatory environment in place with crossing railway lines. I guess the best fit we could find. The best case scenario was the lot layout that we have that split the traffic east and west, so that we weren't getting all of the traffic being funneled through one particular site, and B, that it wouldn't be encouraged to be a rat run from people coming from Kelly's Plains who want to head towards the west, towards the university. They wouldn't use that as a shortcut. So I guess that's the best fit that we could find at the time, and that's what we've gone with.
Could I just follow up that question on the Great Northern Railway, because presumably what would happen would be you'd go to Ross Street, and then the unformed part of Ross Street, then turn left and then go down Markham Street and cross the railway that way. But I had a couple of other questions, and one which was just a discussion I had with the Chief Officer for Sustainable Development was, would you be happy to put on the floodplain areas on the subdivision layout, so that people know when they're buying the blocks which bits are likely to be marshy?
Oh, sure. Certainly, I guess there are already controls in place for that information to be disseminated. The old Section 149 certificates and things like that would identify that land is flood prone. Certainly on the subdivision instrument itself, on the Section 88B, they would be identified. The building envelopes themselves as well would be identified, so they would tell people where you can and can't build a house. So absolutely there are controls in place for that process to already occur.
And the last question, just basically the safety of the level crossing. Can you just outline what plans are there to make sure it's safe?
The existing level crossing on Old Goswick Road, are you referring to? Yeah. That railway crossing was upgraded, I think it was the end of 2019, where boom gates and flashing lights was installed. So that was a significant upgrade for that intersection. So vehicles are physically prevented from crossing that railway intersection when a train's in the vicinity of it. So aside from a grade separation, well, an overpass, something like that, that's the best control that exists at the moment, and that's already in place.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Ferris.
No problem, thank you.
Could I ask Mr. Martin Levins to come up and speak, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and our other guests here today. So thanks for the opportunity to speak to this development application on behalf of the residents of St Patrick's Estate to the west of the proposed development. We oppose this application not from any never in my backyard stance, but from a stance of resultant loss of amenity to residents of the avenue, safety concerns, and concerns regarding the development itself. Now, the first meeting attachment on pages 149 to 150, and I quote, according to the RMS Guide for Traffic Generating Development, it would be expected to generate approximately 10 traffic movements per day, and it goes on to talk about 180 traffic movements per day on the western side via Carina Close. And it goes on to say the revised traffic impact assessment report concludes that the subdivision will have negligible effect on traffic volumes and movements. I beg to differ. This does not consider that the additional 18 dwellings will increase the traffic flow from Carina Close to the western end of the Avenue Loop by 55%. This increase will considerably impact the amenity afforded by that location in terms of noise and, considering the lack of footpaths, safety. According to the attachment on page 150, the avenue is 11 metres wide, yet Carina Close is narrower, some 7.5 metres, meaning that the residents of the close will lose parking amenity. It's noteworthy that when councillors recently inspected the site, only one of them could park on the roadway. All others needed to park on the nature strip. On page 149, the issue of flooding is dismissed, saying that the flood hazard of these areas are, and I quote, negligible, despite stating on 128 that part of the subject site falls below the 1 in 100 flood level. I wonder if we can have that slide back again, please, that we were looking at a minute ago. In the documentation as provided, the flood planning levels and the 1 in 100 year floods are on a separate diagram. So what we've done here is to take that diagram, change its opacity so that you could see through it to see where the blocks of land are proposed, including the roads for ingress and egress on both sides. And you'll notice that both of those roads are within or below the flood planning level. Both those roads are below the flood planning level. And we believe that for these stated reasons, the development as it stands should not be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Levins. Councillors, any questions? Thank you. Well, we'll call on Mr. Greg Keynes to come and speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to thank the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor and councillors for allowing me the opportunity to talk to you all today. From the outset, I'd like it known that I'm actually opposed to development that I'll refer to as Carina Close. I've read all the detail around the proposal and I've been against it from the outset. I understand and acknowledge that the developers have amended from their original proposal on a number of occasions, but I still do have a number of serious concerns that's about the proposal that's before you guys for consideration. As you're well aware from the plans, there are a number of small pockets that are coming off the avenue, known as Cunningham, Winifred, Merino, Kildare and Carina Close. Each of these roads is considerably narrower than the avenue, and each has a density or housing density of around 3 to 5 houses. I believe that this was the actual intent of these narrower roads. What's being proposed for Carina Close is will add to approximately 20 houses. And to me, this is out of character and out of context with the area. As it's well been documented and mentioned today, there are no footpaths in the avenue, so a number of people actually walk on the street. And with the proposal before you, increasing the number of car movements, this presents, in my opinion, a greater risk to those walking on the street. Now, I know we say that it meets code, it's compliant and so forth, but is it right? You know, I personally stand here before you and say, I'm not happy about seeing an extra 50, 100, 200% of cars on a road where there's no footpaths and there's children that walk around after school. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keynes. Councillors, any questions?
This is not for the speakers, it's probably for the staff. Because it's been mentioned a couple of times, a 200% increase in traffic. What is it in real numbers? Like, if it's 4 cars a day, then 200% takes it to 12 cars a day. What's the actual traffic flow? Has there been a traffic flow measure? I might have missed it in the papers, but what is 200%? The 200% that's been mentioned a few times. What does that actually look like in regards to traffic flow? Like, how many cars does that extra at a day?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. The Austroads Guide to Roads actually nominates about 10 movements per dwelling per day on average. So the way that those vehicles are distributed throughout all those movements are distributed through the day, there's normally a diurnal pattern where you end up with a peak in the morning and a peak in the afternoon. But so in real terms, in figures, if you have 18 lots, then you will have 180 movements for which we plan for a particular development. Does that answer the question for you?
All right. Councillor Redwood.
Thank you. Further to your explanation, Mr. Manners, has there been a study on the current traffic around the avenue? I mean, we can use the Austroad calculation of 10 per dwelling per day, but is that actually what we're achieving around the avenue currently?
No, I couldn't actually give you a specific figure, but in a residential area where you generally have lower traffic volumes, so it would be lower than the figures that you would be predicting through the Austroads Guide to Road Design.
Thank you. I'd like to call our last speaker up, please, Ms. Melanie Urquhart.
Good afternoon, councillors and guests. I'm here to speak as a supporter of progress and the improvement and the development of Armidale District. Excuse my nerves. I acknowledge the benefit of providing the large residential blocks for selection. The landholders are entitled to develop their private holdings in ways that support our community. However, the initial development submission was advertised to a select few residents by mail received back in 11th March 2019. That letter requested submissions by the 18th of March, 7 days later. It was only by the diligence of these residents that affected ratepayers were made aware of the proposed development. In a follow-up letter in April 2019, Council said it will advise all those who made submissions. One hopes a limited advertisement of the initial proposal wasn't a deliberate ploy by Council at that time to reduce the level of reaction by the community. The 20th of January, Council wrote again, this is in 2020, to a small number of residents informing us that revised documents and plans are now available on Council's website. You may wish to make a further submission, and that they would advise us of their determination in due course. Once I determined that many of the affected residents of the Avenue area were unaware of the upcoming meeting because they did not receive correspondence from Council, I prepared a petition to determine how many residents were aware of the development. And with support from neighbours, we canvassed the residents for their response. I feel Council would understand the concern of everyone, that everyone is aware of the full details of the submission. I must say it was quite a challenge to find residents at home. The school holidays, Easter and then Anzac long weekend meant that many were absent. However, we received 138 signatures from residents concerned of the increased traffic. Only one declined to sign. The Avenue and adjoining cul-de-sacs responded with high concern for the link through Carina Close to the new subdivision. You say you have considered that the development will not adversely affect the special environment values or residential amenity of the area. 138 residents disagree with that statement. You indicate there may be 180 new traffic movements. The highest concern of the residents is the effect of the dramatic increase in traffic. Please consider the stress to the residents who are fearful of the effects of the traffic load on the current submission. I believe that some of the conditions outlined are not as they seem, which must be of concern to councillors. However, the community are confused by the correspondence or lack thereof from Council. Local real estate agents are certainly indicating a negative effect on the Avenue property prices, and those who did not make their customers are aware of the possibility of a change in the traffic conditions, and the idea to change cul-de-sac to a through road are concerned that those residents will take legal action should another subdivision be joined to ours. So develop the land for residential country living in Armidale, but consider the cost to the current residents. Promote new housing subdivisions and encourage families to our town, but not to the detriment of residents already here. Many more of members of the community would have attended today, but for the timing and their work commitments. We acknowledge that the residents I represent here today are valued and worthy of your thoughts in supporting their submissions and addressing their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Urquhart. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Gadders.
Sorry, Ms Urquhart. Sorry. Thank you very much for your information. I just wanted to clarify from my point of view, it said you were speaking for the event or for the development. So if I could just ask, what do you see is the primary benefit you see for this development?
I think the blocks of land will be fantastic to a degree. I think we're all where we are because of subdivisions being opened up. I just feel that because not everybody was aware, that they just couldn't make their decision. Yes, we've got to develop, we've got Armidale to grow. It's not that, I just feel that a lot of people are upset, and just by pushing ahead so soon without taking into account everybody's comments is not a good thing. It's not a good look for council, and I just thought yes to development, but please, for any development, talk to people more, be more open, respond to their concerns.
Thank you. Any other councillors?
We might be able to bring this up when it comes up, but a couple of people have mentioned the community engagement aspect of it, and I'm just wondering if someone could, comment on that about the communication aspect, and maybe they missed some things, or.
I think Councillor O'Brien, maybe if we discuss that in the body of the ordinary council meeting. Thank you, Ms. Urquhart. Well, thank you all. That draws to a close the public forum, the Have Your Say forum.